When I was 4, we moved into a very nice neighborhood. 1986. Just built. Nice schools. A few weeks after we had moved in, our neighbors moved in. I remember the moving truck being there and wondering what was going on. So I went outside to investigate. Just a bunch of adults moving furniture out of the truck. I'm not interested anymore. Well, I'm outside. Might as well go play with my Tonka trucks in the dirt pit out back. Then I saw a girl in the backyard. She looked at me and ran around the far side of her house. For some reason I cannot explain to this day. I ran alongside the side of my house to the front yard. And there she was. Upon seeing me, she ran out of view to the backyard. Again, I did the same. This stupid shit went on for a few more times before I said the 4-year-old version of fuck it and just walked over. After some awkward introductions, we became friends. We were born only 2 days apart. Capricorn, bitches. Naturally, we became friends. So did her parents. She was a bit tomboyish, so she ended up liking a lot of the stuff I did. Like climbing trees, so did she. She liked to play tongas in the dirt pit. So, a 6x6 spot in the yard my dad made for me. She was into creating channels that represented rivers and making a toothpick or popsicle stick bridges in there. So, she usually ended up playing the role of the foreman, and I drove the tonkas around digging out her rivers. Naturally, we spent more time together than we did with our friends of the same sex. I clearly remember at barbecues, or just idle talk between our parents, the running gag that we were going to marry after high school. I think the fact that we were friends at such a young age and really enjoyed playing together erased the issue of leaving us alone together. As we got older, the leash that tied us to the house was removed. Around 9, we discovered that over the hill behind our houses existed a forest. Play in the woods was a common phrase. We would spend entire days in there. Can't do shit like that today though. In the summer of 91, we discovered something very neat. A clearing of about 2,000 square foot, with a large sycamore tree in the center. The floor was covered in ivy, not poison ivy. Over time, this became known as the place. It was also around this time we began to notice each other as more than friends. In the winter of 1995, January, it was now customary for our families to celebrate our birthdays together, generally on the day before hers or after mine. On her birthday, I brought her to the place. I remember that day clearly. The snowfall had covered the clearing, making the area look pristine. We walked to a tree in the center, and I gave her the first gift I could afford on my own. As dumb or as corny as it may seem, it was the first Calvin and Hobbes book. She was a huge Calvin and Hobbes fan, and I was never good at thinking up any thoughtful one-liners. So I just put, "Happy 13th birthday, Feminom." I was given a hug as a thank you, and she sat up against the tree as we began reading together. She was halfway through before the sun had set and it was impossible to continue. But we did not leave. We continued to talk for about 20 minutes before falling silent. Her head on my shoulder, both of us just enjoying the moment. Then, out of the blue, "Anon, do you like me?" "Yes." It was automatic and I gave it no thought. "I like you too." She looked up at me, and in a cold January night, under the tree in the middle of a forest, we had our first kiss. It seemed that in some women, a crazy switch resides in, and at an unknown point in their lives, the switch flips to on. Such was the case with my mother. I started with yelling and arguing, and closet alcoholism. Soon, men I'd never met before started coming to the house with her when my dad was at work. This went on till the summer of 1996. That's when the term divorce became a regular part of my parents' vocabulary. It was very ugly, but in the end, my mother won custody of me and got the house and pretty much everything else. We started our sophomore year together, but after a month, I was told we were moving. My mum would not tell me where or give me an address, thinking I'd give my info to my father, which she would get anyway through the courts, but at 16, I don't know how that shit works. I wanted to give Feminom that info so we could remain in contact. Remember, 1996, no Facebook, internet was still foreign to us. Knowing our time together was fast approaching an end. September 21, 1996. We moved the next day. It was very early and I had to sneak out of the house, because at this point, my mum prohibited me from seeing the neighbours. She thought we were working with my dad to mine me for information. I knocked on her window and she pointed me to the back door. Her parents greeted me there, which I thought had me busted. The past year had fucked up my understanding of them, and constantly having to avoid my mother bled into me viewing adults as evil. She came out dressed and ready to spend our last day together, and her parents handed her a bag of food. "You two spend as much time together as you need." We left and headed to the place. Most of the day we spent talking about how much bullshit it was that I was moving. It wasn't until the evening, when I reached the bottom of the bag of the food, that I found an unopened condom. Instead of trying to discover how it got there, nature took over. Once we were clothed again, the condom dispersed off, several hours had passed in total silence, just holding one another. The full moon sat directly above us, illuminating the entire area. It was then I checked my watch. 0255. The moving van would arrive in 5 hours. Knowing our time was up, another hour was spent boring, just before we headed back home. "Anon, give me your multi-tool." I handed her my Leatherman super tool my father gave me 2 years back. "Son, if you're gonna spend that much time outdoors, you're gonna need a good tool." I remember him saying when I opened that gift. To this day, I always carry a Leatherman on me. She began to carve into a tree. Classic cart with initials. I carved my initials in. Carving into a tree is much harder than TV makes it appear. "Now we'll always be together." I spent a little over 2 years with my mother before she relinquished all custodial rights to my father and moved out of the state. The past 2 years with her reduced my motivation to try and see Feminine again to zero. At this point, I had ridden off the whole thing and continued on with my life. Besides, I now live 200 miles away. At 17, I viewed it as impossible. Also, the insane amount of prescription drugs that she had me on for bullshit reasons held me for pushing it off my mind. I joined the Navy at 18, spent 6 years there, AS. Went to school to get a BS in Network Admin, Linux, and began my career. It wasn't until I was helping my father move into another house, spring of 2008, when my past came flooding back to me. There was a box in the basement, labelled Anon school stuff. Why not? I had a few hours to spare for nostalgia. On top was a yearbook of my 5th grade year in elementary school. I began thumbing through it, recognizing names and faces when I got to my class and saw her. Over a decade worth of memories smashed into my brain all at once. With the book in hand, I ran upstairs, told my dad sorry, but there was something I had to do, and left. He later told me he knew exactly what happened when I rushed out of the house with the yearbook in hand. I drove 200 miles back to my old stomping grounds. The neighborhood looked unchanged, save for the trees being larger. I got to my old house and parked in the street. She had obviously moved too, since some people I'd never seen before were in the garage, retching on what happened to be a 65 Shelby. Guess I'll start there. "Pardon me, Anons." They came out from under the hood. I explained myself, living next door, and asked how long they'd been there. 8 years. Damn, I've been away for quite some time. I asked if I could cut through their yard to access to the forest. Sure. Now, maybe because I was younger and lacked any concept of distance, or maybe I just got lost, but Jesus fuck, that place was a lot farther than I remember. When I finally reached it, I stood at the edge of the ivy. The whole area was like a time capsule. Nothing had changed. I proceeded towards the tree when I found the carving. I let out an audible, "No way!" It still looked as though it was carved within the past few months. And below it were tally marks that counted up to 12. 12! That's how many years since I moved! After an hour of boring, I returned back to my car. I thanked the homeowner, and just as I was getting into my car, "Hey buddy, hold on. I'm not sure if this means anything to you, but I was thinking. Only 2 people have cut through my yard to get to the forest back there. You being one. Now, I don't know about the other, but for the first 3 years I've been here, every early January, I'd find footprints in the snow leading up to and out of the woods. Thank you, sir. You've done more to help than you could ever possibly understand." I returned early the next morning to help my father move and began my wait. Now, I had 3 days to choose from. My birthday, the day after my birthday, and her birthday. To maximize my chances of being right, I started on my birthday. Now I couldn't go back to Shelby Reelbeld's house, and asked to camp outside his house waiting. Besides, he told me that she had no longer used his yard to access the woods. The only other point of access was a park a mile away on the opposite side. The day before my birthday, I went to the park and checked the tree just as a dry one. Holy fuck, walking a mile through thick forest and goddamn snow takes for fucking ever. And thank God for GPS. There was no way I could have found it starting from the park. I was fully committed to this, to make sure I didn't miss a damn thing. I was going to stay overnight each night at the park, using his camping facilities for showering and whatnot. First 3 days, nothing. I was extremely bored, and by day 3, I was pretty much on the verge of saying fuck this noise as my patience had run out, and a car pulled up with a single female in it. She got out and walked into the woods. I was unable to confirm who it was, because some fat fuck of a was in my line of sight. All I knew was female, in the woods, and like a creepy rapist, I followed. The snowfall was heavy, and I had to follow her footsteps in the snow, and the braking sticks ahead of me. Finally, I got to the place. Her back was turned to me while she was carving another tally mark into the tree. I stood at the edge of the clearing, which put me another 40 square feet from her, and waited. After some sobbing noise, she stood up and turned. I heard a startled gasp from her as she froze in fear. I removed my hat. Her hands went up to her mouth, and tears began to flow. I walked over to her, and without a word, we embraced each other. After some time, we separated and began our reunion. I explained the whole deal to her, what happened after I moved, etc. How was past there until it was dark again. This seems to be a thing with us. Whenever we were both at that tree, we never leave until it's dark. She never married, she dated, but she said none of them ever felt right like we did. What I did find amusing was that she went to school for and became a civil engineer. Considering the billions of toothpicks and popsicle sticks that she used to make various bridges and buildings, it made sense. We spent the next few nights at her place, catching up. I was reintroduced to her parents, who were overcome with joy to see me. Her father did ask, "So Anon, did you get any use out of it?" I instantly knew what he meant. Yes we did. And I must say, where other parents would be dicks about the entire thing, you two understood what we had formed over these 10 years and encouraged it. When she re-met my father for the first time in my life, I saw him cry. It was rather awkward, but he was seeing the past my mother had stolen from me. A few months later, I proposed to her, again at the tree, where else would be appropriate at this point. For a brief moment, we thought of having the wedding at the place, but quickly realized the logistical nightmare of moving 20 to 50 well-dressed people through a mile of thick bush. However, the marriage was consummated under that tree. That fucking tree knows more about us than it probably knows about the whole goddamn forest by now. 12 months ago, she died of cancer. Shortly before she died, I was given a gift, and given strict instruction not to open it until my birthday. Her ashes were obviously spread around that tree, and the wedding and engagement ring were fitted over a young branch. Over time, the branch would grow and absorb them. This year, my birthday, I sat at the kitchen table with the present in front of me, debating if I should even open it or leave it be. After several hours of mental wrestling, I opened it. Calvin and Hobbes, the book I gave her 18 years ago. I opened it, and on the inside of the front cover, "Happy 13th birthday, Feminine." But taped to the top and inside of the cover was a folded piece of paper. I opened it to see the final panel of Calvin and Hobbes' strip. She had altered the panel. "You gave me what I lost, Anon. Until we meet again."